Going to call the Warren County Occupancy Tax second meeting for January to order. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from January 21st OCTAX meeting. Kevin Garrity, Edna. Any questions, deletions, additions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carried. First on the agenda, we have the Honorable Mayor Blaze here to give us a spiel about our sewage treatment plant. Cowboy.
It's like this, you're closed off, and if your pumps are out, they're open. But your belly's open. I know that was...
This is about new information here.
Probably don't.
I just took one of your spreadsheets and reconfigured things, so, you know, it's just more than I can keep track of, that's all.
But I always get them mixed up. I'm a really bad.
And I would like to see the
Mr. Chairman, I gave someone mine, so if you see some scribbling on the bottom, that's yours. Yeah, I just gave away a secret there. Yeah, members of the committee, I was here
Did you get?
a few months ago on behalf of the village, and
They didn't get any.
since that time, I'm sure many of you know that the governor thankfully came through and awarded the village of Lake George $9.4 million for our wastewater treatment plant. And while that's certainly a lot of money, and we're very grateful to the governor, our need is still there for some additional funding. So I'm still out beating the bush, kind of like Shark Tank, looking for people to invest in our wastewater treatment plant. The plant is under construction. We broke ground in August of this year. We're under a consent order, as you know, from DEC to complete the plant by August 2021. So we actually broke ground, went ahead, borrowed $17 million from EFC, and had faith that we were going to get some additional funding, which we did. The grants that the village has to date is $2.5 million from DEC, $4 million from the WQIP program, and $500,000 from the North Country Alliance. And add that to the governor's budget, we've been able to recoup $16.4 million out of the $24 million. The balance, if bonded, and I have those figures in the packet, at 0% interest, because unlike what most people think, Lake George is the big houses and mansions and castles on the lake. The people that are funding this wastewater treatment plant are the people on our back streets, and of course our motel folks and accommodations, but none of those folks on the lake, unfortunately, are hooked up to our sewer system. So it's mainly being funded by our 995 year-round residents and the residents that reside in the town of Lake George's Caldwell Sewer District, which the village services as well. Our annual debt service then now is $253,333. With the projected increase in O&M with our new plant, which is also included in there, estimated by Chazen Company, which will be an additional $69,000, $70,000 a year. The town of Lake George Caldwell Sewer District cost will increase from $63.49 a unit to $104.63. It's down from what it was before. The village of Lake George tax rate will go from $6.29 to $7.39 a thousand. If we add the expenditures to our budget this year that we're presently in, the village would be $218,000 over the tax cap. That's a lot of money in our village to try to find in a budget for a community our size. So I'm here again asking the Occupancy Tax Committee to consider and look at the village of Lake George in the same light that you look at the city center and pool insuring arena and in East Field. We're the center that generates a lot of occupancy tax with all the special events that we do. We put over $200,000 a year in our budget to provide free events for the guests that get here. We just do it because we've done it. It's a tradition. You open the page of the Warren County Tourism Guide, and on the very front cover, and this year on the second cover, is our fireworks shows. $75,000 a year. Those are the things that we don't want to cut out because of the expenses that we've got connected with the wastewater treatment plant, which was absolutely necessary. There's no question that Lake George deserves the best technology that's available, and our choice to build a brand new wastewater treatment plant rather than put Band-Aids on one that was 85 years old and incidentally cost $125,000 to build back in 1934, was a good choice, and will deliver, and we'll have capacity to take on extra businesses over the next several years. We host over 60 concerts. We do the weekly fireworks shows, and there's expenses connected with us in the village, and there's revenues too. To host Americade and the car show and the wine festival and all these other events that we host, very similar to the Cool Insuring Arena, which is also a tremendous asset to this county. We can go back in history and talk about when the county and the village got involved in the Wood Park and town of Lake George. Folks at that time didn't agree with us. The village stepped up to the plate and bought out the town of Lake George so we could be partners in the Wood Park. When the county decided that they wanted to gain some extra revenue and took the Beach Road parking lot back from the village, it cost the village over $100,000 a year. And we still maintain the Beach Road parking lot, and we still collect it, and then we just send the county a check every year. And that's amounted to over $600,000. When the county wanted to build a parking lot next to the Wood Park, the village stepped up to the plate and said, you build the park, we'll take care of it for you, we'll collect it, we'll enforce it, and we'll just send you a check every year. And it was the same thing when we built our visitor center on Canada Street. We built a special room for Warren County for all the towns to publicize all of their events, pass out their brochures. So we've been good partners with the county. The county's been good partners with the village all these years. And now we're asking you to consider again $100,000 a year for 10 years. We've got $459,000 in a reserve fund now, and by adding $50,000 a year to that from our budget, which we can afford to do, at the end of 10 years we'll be able to pick up that $100,000 and be able to keep the village under the tax cap, hopefully, for the next 10 years. But I'm here pleading for the town of Lake George as well, because their rates are high already. And Supervisor Dickinson knows this, and they're forced, obviously, to pump to our plant, and they're good partners with us. But their rates are going to go even higher, and those are some of the biggest accommodations that are in our community. If those folks are faced, you're going to hear later, I know, that we're faced with a huge problem now. We're losing some people because the motel and hotel rates are going up, where people now in other parts of the country aren't coming here anymore. Their events are finding out they can go to another place and do softball and baseball and have a wine festival and only pay $149 a night rather than $219. So if our rates keep going up, we're going to be hurt all the way around. I'm not only speaking for the folks in the village of Lake George, but I'm speaking for those businessmen. We need to keep their tax rate low. We need to keep their contributions low so that we can continue to draw the people that come here and generate the occupancy tax. And I have no doubt that we can do that if we can get some additional funding. I would not be here and asking for it if we didn't need it. And obviously I should be here asking for it if I'm a good mayor. So I'm here. I'm shaking every door there is. And I'm going to keep doing it until I don't believe that we have an opportunity I don't believe there's any other funding out there between now and when we continue to build that the village will be able to reap any additional funds on the state or the federal level. We've explored just about everything we can to date, and we don't see any additional funding coming in. Perhaps another $500,000 from the North Country Alliance, and we got 500. The limit is $1 million. Yes.
Kevin?
Yeah. This 253, is that addition to what you're already paying in debt service, or is that going to be your debt service?
That's just the debt service from this wastewater treatment plant. We already have, you'll see there further, we already have $79,000 in debt service we pay each year because of the Band-Aids we put on the plant the last few years.
The sewer rate for Caldwell going from 63 to 104, is that to pay the debt service?
That pays their debt service.
Their debt service on the plant?
Yep.
Your tax rate going up $1. When will this plant be done?
2021. We're on schedule.
So we have a year or so. You know, I would think that maybe we could find an alternative. You're asking us to pay you, you would like to see $100,000 for how many years?
10.
10 years. So you're looking for $1 million. And obviously, our budget's already set for 2020. Maybe what we could do is forgo some of the parking revenue on the beach road for a couple of years to give you some payments there, because is that revenue going up every year?
It went up when we went from $1 to $2, Kevin, but if you can, it's in there, the amount of money that you've received annually is in this figure, but yes, it went up, well, back in 2000 it was 58,000, or excuse me, 58,000 has gone up to about 64,000 last year. But not much. But that is a possibility. Yes.
Well, because we're here to trim our oxy tax. We're here to trim it back. Although make a valid point. I know you referenced the Glens Falls events, but there again, the reason why we went with the Civic Center obviously is because of the events, and I know you put a lot of money into events. But rather than go into oxy tax, and it's a revenue that we're counting on now, and any year we cut it out, Frank, would not be good. I mean, you know that. Any year we not cut out that revenue, but perhaps that would be a way to fund it without rating the oxy tax fund more. Maybe we could work something, because you don't need it right away. You need a guarantee, but you don't need it right.
Well, what I would tell you is that the villages are on a June 1 to May 1st year, so
right, but I mean,
we're working on our budget right now for next year.
Okay.
For June 1, so I don't need to know this month or whatever next month. But once we do our budget in June, we will still have that balance paid. So we will not have borrowed all that money.
Right.
But we just talked to Larry out in the hallway because he does it.
But see, I'm looking at this, Mayor. Revenues were, okay, it's only 90-some thousand a year then.
Doesn't include May though.
Right.
Well, we'll say it's 100,000. If we were to forgive the 100,000 in parking fees and funnel that into just the sewer district, that may be a way without rating the oxy tax funds anymore, and allow you, that would be a way to helping you, because we're here today to talk about, everybo's asking us for oxy tax money. I mean, I know it's $100,000 in revenue, and I don't know, just that thought came across when I'm sitting here. I mean, I want to help you.
I understand.
I really want to help you, but we have to be careful because we do have a lot of ask from oxy tax.
I think you've got to have your priorities, and I've looked at the way the occupancy tax funds have gone the past few years, and I think the county needs to sharpen their pencils a little bit with the way you give it out. I would profess to you that the events that we do all summer long, the fireworks shows in particular, hosting Americades and all those people are far more important than allocating money year after year after year to an event.
Right. But that's my thought, you know, that maybe we look at the parking revenues, and rather than, maybe we do a give back. And we do it for, you know, but there again, you know, we've counted on that revenue in 2020. But maybe in 2021, we could look at it to give that. But I'd like to dedicate it just for the sewer plant. You know, we'd have to dedicate it, and then any increase in the revenues from the parking meters off the two things, you know, we could let it build up a little bit, and then it would have to and I guess sunset. I'm not very good at sunset. I got sunburnt. Right, Remy?
Yeah, well, I'm here today again because we've got time.
It's almost a guarantee that you would get at least $100,000 every year, and then we wouldn't have to go into the Oxy tax funds, and we could do some of the things we want to do later on to stabilize the Oxy tax funds, because, you know, we do need to keep getting the events there, and if we see that they drop down, maybe perhaps we can make...
It's in excess from the beach road. It's 25%. The county gets 25% from the beach road, which you know you never got until a few years ago.
No, I understand.
Because you didn't even know you owned it.
That's correct, but that's why I'm saying maybe it's a give back.
When you took it away from the village, it was $100-some-odd thousand a year. It didn't help us any, but that's, thank you for the suggestion.
Well, I mean, I you know, nobody wants to lose any revenues out of their budget, but, because we don't want this fight, because everybody will come back to us, and that actually is property within the village.
I understand.
If the village is, you know, as much as, you know, I heard your stump speech, it was pretty good. You know, there's a couple things I didn't agree with, but that's all right, but that's what I would do if it was me, and I had the authority to do that. I would suggest that we turn over the parking revenues in 2021 back to the village for up to 10 years, or we set a fund, and then we could plan our budget in the future.
It's in excess of 100. It's usually about 125, 130,000 a year, so
right, but
you'd still get some.
We could put that specifically, and it may even help the town of Lake George in Dennis's payment. You know, we could help both of them in doing that. I don't know. You know, that's just my thought.
Well, excuse me, whatever we get, we're sharing it with the town.
Right, so it's both entities with you know, I mean, something to think.
Gene?
I don't want anybody to think that Kevin and I talked about this, which honestly we didn't.
We didn't.
We didn't.
Yeah.
That was exactly what my first thing was going to be.
Oh, I don't believe it.
Well, you can take it to the bank, it was. Because it's going to be what we're discussing. It's tough to cut back on the op tax. What we're trying to do to get more money into that fund, and then give 100,000 out, probably won't even get back what we're cutting back just to get back. But I thought the same thing. They had that parking spot for all those years until we discovered it was ours. But I think if you keep that money, you know, somehow that can help. You know, we don't have to leave any extra out of the option.
We'd love to keep it.
I know. So I think, you know, I think I just reached over it. I thought the same thing. When you see started slogging, that's what might keep it. Didn't I tell you that?
Great minds.
It really was. So I think I agree with Kevin. It should be done.
So, Mayor, you're talking about starting that payment in 2021. Does that fit into your schedule?
We've already had to borrow the money.
Yeah.
We've borrowed enough because we have to have some cash flow. I think we've borrowed $7 million so far, and we'll be needing probably some more this fall, something like that. The balance is going to be, we'll need to have borrowed it just so we have cash flow.
Okay, so that's acceptable.
If we don't know by our next budget, which starts June 1, then these are the figures that I've given you. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Got it. Anybody else? John?
Mayor, my concern is, well, Cary Road Industrial Park, I didn't get any grant funding, I didn't ask for any tax, and it really, it's a burden. And there's tourism things, there's trampoline, there's rock climbing, there's tourism things there. But more importantly, I'm concerned that if we give money here, that are we gonna lose out on this tinsel structure that we've talked about many times? The tinsel structure, would provide, allow the events to go on despite the weather being uncooperative. It would expand the shoulder system. It would even allow events to occur in Lake George during the winter. We all know that. And I think most of us would support that concept. But, that's going to be some kind of an expense. And if we're constrained in terms of occupancy tax and where it's going, I'd almost rather see it go there. If it's given to me that it either is an either or, I'd rather see it go to a tinsel structure. But, so I'm again, I understand these constraints and the concerns that you have, because I have the same. But I'm not sure how to handle it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else got anything? Kevin, do you want to make that as a resolution and turn it over to the Public Works?
Well, I'm okay going forward, like I said, I don't want to deplete the 2020, because I'd be shooting myself in the foot, take money away from this year's budget, but I think that's a good way, and I hear what Supervisor Strauss saying also. There's a lot of people who are facing constraints, and the state's letting us down in most cases. I mean, they were fortunate. We didn't get money for a $1 million project up in my community that we have to do irregardless, So, but yes, I'll put that forward in a motion that we work on payments from the parking meters revenues in the village and turn them over to the village to be used strictly for debt service on this sewer thing.
Gene, you want to second that?
2021, starting in
2021.
Village and town?
Village and town on 2021.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions?
That's a referral to Public Works.
Right.
Wherever you got to refer to.
Yep. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for your patience.
I wanted to have a comment.
Mr. Wild, go
I know
ahead.
the resolution is passed.
Right.
But I wanted to talk to the committee about two things. There was a presentation I made last September, OCTAX, and the growth of OCTAX. Some people refer to 2008, 2009 as the Great Recession. It took us 4 years to get back to the same level of OCTAX revenue. It didn't happen until 2012, 2013. So as you move forward committing OCTAX for long periods of time, you may get in bigger trouble with this, because if that drops like it did, 10, 15%, then where do we get that money from to support those obligations? And it's the second piece that I want to talk about is economic development, which you guys, most of you know that I'm involved thinking about that extensively. I think of economic development as a three-legged stool. You think about one being maintaining existing businesses, the second being growing business, the third being acquiring or attracting new business. Those should have equal footings. We should be doing some investments. My contention is, and based on the data that I saw, all we do is maintain. So I'm just trying to implore the group to think about taking some risks, making some investments with OCTAX so that we can move this economy, it's a big part of our economy, moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay. Spending plan for 2020. I mean, do we have a proposal or anything? Couple.
That's what we did last year. If we kept it the same as what's appropriated in the budget, these are the cuts that we would do. Except we went higher.
Yeah, it's 425.
Is it this one?
No, there's an email, so.
That was what we had last time, right? Okay, yeah, I got that. That's what he was trying to do about
All right, if you look in your packet, you got your resolution, page 2 of 2, resolution 501 for 2018. That's money spent in 2019. I'm going to start at the bottom and go up. Lake George Convention Center this year, we've allocated $550,000 to them. The county events, the fiasco at the beginning of the month, we dragged off another $60,000 and bumped that to $425,000, much to my chagrin. The Civic Center is still at $250,000. We also have $100,000 a month for their capital improvement for 5 years. And then what I would like to do is reinstate Queensbury, Bolton, and Lake George to 60, 60, and 150. Question, comments, discussion?
And keep 135 for towns and cities.
Yes.
I don't know where that is. Where is that?
Oh,
Yes, yes, yes.
We're just, Chairman?
Yes.
We're just working off of the second page resolution from 2018.
Yes.
Spending plan.
There's no new proposals out. No, we're looking at the old one and the
Right.
new one.
Right.
Right.
No, I know.
Basically, it's those top three numbers are, want to restate them to what they were.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, clarification on the Lake George Convention Visitors Bureau. On the 2019 occupancy tax spending plan, we dedicated $400,000, but then at some point we bumped it up another $150,000.
Correct.
And that was for specific items or so. So should that be kept? Should those two things stay decoupled, or are we coupling it all under? I was thinking decoupling. We still maintain a $400,000 for whatever the contract was, and then the $150,000 for what the additional. No. I see the attorney shaking.
What we've been trying to do, Craig, is grow the CVB. So we bumped them up a couple years ago, and then last year we did a contract with them for $400,000. Had a commitment from them. They had to show us that they were doing a job promoting that was above and beyond what tourism was doing. So we wanted them to be a partner with tourism, not competing with them. And they did a stellar job with that. They worked very closely with Joanne in the tourism department. They're looking at areas that the tourism department doesn't necessarily highlight. And based on their performance last year, we bumped them to the 550. At some point in time, the CVB needs to, one, be a standalone organization away from the chamber, in my opinion. And they're going to need a long-term commitment, because one of the things they're doing with the money is hiring people. And it's difficult to hire people a year at a time, especially if they're qualified in a specific field. So that's where we're headed with that line. And at this point, we're at 550, and they are attempting to make the CBB a standalone entity.
Thank you for that
You're welcome.
clarification.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Well, I have a different take. If we're going to keep the funding for the special events at the level we have, which is 60,750 over, right?
Yes.
I would suggest that on the town level, each of the towns that get the 15,000 reduce it down by $2,500 apiece. The 5 towns, or the three communities that get the extra money, they each take 5,000 off their allocations. And then I also would take $23,250 from the tourism budget 481, which is for promotions. And that would get you back, that would get you your $60,750 to cover the events that we picked on, or we decided this year, and then that way you wouldn't have to go into Oxy tax reserves. And certainly I don't mind giving up $2,500, even though, you know, and I don't know if the 3 big towns would mind giving up 5,000 of their extra 60. So the ones that got 15,000 would give up 2,500. The ones that got 60,000 extra would just give up 5,000 apiece of that. That would pay for the events. We could leave the special events the way we did them this year, and I don't think we'd irritate anybody if they got what we agreed with.
Kevin, truthfully, I would have rather given the $60,700 to Bolton and Lake George and Town and Village, and not giving them back to the events. We hadn't allocated, as I said in the beginning of that meeting, we had allocated $365,000 for events.
Right.
We go through the events, everybody rates them A events, everybody gives them more money. We're $60,000 over. My intent was to go back and pare that down till we made the 325.
Well, it's just a different way of getting there, but giving the events one more year and saying, or coming up with different, or rewrite the program. And stick to it. I mean, you know, we don't seem to stick to it, but...
Well, that was my point last time. I was prepared to go through those.
You know, I'm just trying to be fair to everybody, and I'm trying to be fair to the events this year. And we even had one that I think wasn't happy with what we awarded. And then, you know, we did a little looking into attendance of the major events to see if, that's in your packet too, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
And, you know, they are putting heads in beds, which is, you know, and this is as scientific as we could, because we went to the Smith Travel and the Airbnb information that we had. Now, mind you, different clientele may come to these events where they don't go to people who report to Smith Travel.
Right.
You know, so but it's about as good as you can get, Dennis, with documents. So that was my suggestion for this year, and then
I don't get enough money in Lake George for all the things I need to do.
you know, I looked at your stuff. You get an awful lot of hits, awful lot of asks.
They ask for twice as much as I get or more, and they come in all year long. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating when somebody has a great idea, a great event that you're not able to finance them. So I took a hit last year. It really hurt, and I don't want to do it again. I think we're missing the point here.
It's just a suggestion to try to come up with the money. And
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with your last statement at the end of that diatribe. We need to take a step back and look at this OCTAX money and decide what we really want to do with it. We're willy-nilly throwing money at this, that, and the other thing. We need to get a long-term plan. We need to get a real overview of where we're spending the money and where it should go or needs to go. There's no question about it. Gene?
I agree with that. You need to overview, like even the rules and regulations that were put forth by Mr. Dusick way back when, with really not a lot of input from committees. But there's some parts of that thing that people are expressing their thoughts on opt-out. And I really believe, we can't do it this year, or this year, we can do it for next year, that we should sit down with a small committee and redo the towns. I look at some of those reports, and I think most of the people do a fairly good job. But there are a lot of things in there that we're supporting with opt-outs, that, in my personal opinion, because some towns get a lot more than the little towns. I'm not looking for more, I'm like Kevin's idea. But I can't put money into capital projects, because some people put money in capital projects they're not even get. I believe buildings and things like that for capital projects doesn't bring tourism into this place. This is designed to advertise things that promote tourism. You can't use it for sidewalks or roads, but capital projects also, that's a stretch, in my opinion.
But we did do that, Gene.
Yeah, I know. So that's what I say, I think we got, if you're gonna start and really think about the way this stuff has to be distributed, and not have these battles every year and everybody get mad at each other, we gotta start from looking at the beginning, and see if we can refine some of what to be and what can't be.
Gene, let me see if we can get something set up and do that.
If you're really serious on revamping some of this.
I am, this is ridiculous,
Okay.
go through this every year, the
It's,
whole thing.
I look at it, I hear this all the time, and I know everybody gets mad at me when I say it, but, well, my town brings in 25%, I should get 25%. Well, the town doesn't do anything to bring them in. The hotels, motels that collect this money, the people that are collecting it for us to bring them here. Town has nothing to do with it. We're lucky, we just get a chunk of money to help promote our communities. But it's not really, the town of Lake George doesn't do anything. They get the programs going, but the people in the town don't do anything for it. Well, I know it gets people mad when I say this, but, sales tax is the same thing, but sales tax goes by what your town is worth. You have to understand that.
The towns of Lake George and Bolton have both done a lot to generate. We spent $7 million on our entryway. No OC tax money. $7 million rebuilt the entryway. We didn't do that for the people who live there. We did it because it's a nice presentation when you get off the Northway. And of all the things I've done, that's the most compliments I get is the entryway coming in. So we do spend the money. So we put the entryway in for $7 million. We got grants to cover most, so we covered $300 and some thousand. The town did, no occupancy tax money. And then driving down the entryway the first fall, I said, we got 2 miles of sidewalk. It's the only 2 miles of sidewalk we've ever had in the town. I don't have a sidewalk plow to the tune of $154,000, which the town bought.
Try 180.
No, 154 articulating and,
Yeah, we paid 180.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do spend a lot of money. Rachel, did you have something?
We did, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what both Gene and Kevin are saying, although I think I take a little more stricter of an approach on it. Looking back at the resolutions, Resolution 150 of 2005 looks like it worked pretty well right up until 2015 when that additional allocation was made. And it looks like in 2019 you even reduced that sum to meet the needs of those additional events. I hope, Dennis, that we do look moving forward at revamping the way occupancy tax is revised and the Schedule A guidelines, and taking a hard look at the intent of it from the beginning, reinstituting that occupancy tax advisory group, and really taking a look at how this can change moving forward. But this 2019 spending plan looks like it was supposed to be approved in 2019 for 2020, right?
Mhm.
And my suggestion, and it's just one vote, would be to go back to that 30,000 straight with the 25%. And back, I know that's not a popular view, but if you look at the reserves, and I had a chance to meet with the treasurer this morning and go over those numbers, it makes a lot of sense to continue to say, if the spending trends continue, we won't have that the $1 million reserve, and subsequently, instead of using OCTAX for a lot of the tourism functions and the events and everything else that it was intended for, we'll be going right back to the general fund for it. So I know you're talking about changing this moving forward, but I think something has to be done with the current spending plan. And furthermore, when I contacted the county attorney's office. I had asked for time to review everything. I know the county attorney's office has been in the process of reviewing. Mary indicated to me this is the first year her office has been involved in taking a look at the audit section of it, but it's my understanding that there isn't an audit of how these funds are spent. And looking at the 2017 and 2018 towns, there's no guidance on fund balances. Some towns spend all of it, other towns keep enough to roll over the next year, some towns have a substantial amount of money in those fund balances. And I think maybe some direction and guidance on those balances moving forward would be helpful as well. The forms are still, as much as we tried before to have them uniform, they vary. Dennis, I will say that the village or the town form, in my opinion, is one of the best ones and could be an example moving forward of all the information that should be provided. But I don't see where an audit has been done of, okay, looking at Schedule A guidelines and the resolutions, do all of these expenditures fall within occupancy tax? And I know our treasurer has said, that the guidelines are very vague. And, moving forward, that would be great to be able to revise and take a look at the state law and compare it to the county. But I just think looking at the spending plan moving forward now into 2020, I'm sure there isn't any buy-in to go back to that. But if that could be the ideal scenario, I'd say go back to that initial funding. I thought that was supposed to be a temporary solution in 2015 when that got changed. And that agreement was made when we started looking at Civic Center funding and additional allocations to towns. But I'm not saying some towns aren't using all of it, but I'm saying there's inconsistency.
It was more of a permanent move, and it was based on the fact that we were generating more OCTAX. You generate more every year. It goes up the least cost of living 3% and more. This year we've been very fortunate. We've picked up the B&Bs, and we had a major facility that owed us a lot of money. So we got a couple shots in the arm, but we really need to get an overall plan. Frank?
Yeah, I think part of the reason that they money got allocated, the additional money, was to spend out in the reserve. The reserve was getting too high, it was setting out $3 million here, and this money was used for housing. That was part of the reason that they, so we accomplished that mission, spent the money, so, maybe those people go well. And as far as investing in capital projects, I can speak for Stony Creek. We build a trail system over there that brings an incredible amount of people to this town, to our town. So to say that by putting money into capital projects is wrong, it's directly tourism related, it's not wrong.
No, I agree with you, Frank, and I've said that all along. I think the problem is that, the capital projects is a pretty generic term. It's not filling potholes, but it may be something like building trails. It may be something like lighting downtown Chestertown, which now has 3 restaurants open year-round. Those are definitely capital projects done with OCTAX that have been very beneficial to the community and to tourism. So I think that's more of our obligation with the OCTAX, is to determine when it's a good project and not a good project. I don't think just to say you can't spend money on capital improvements, period, is the answer. Dan?
reading this from his guidelines, it appears fairly clear. Capital projects, what expenditures need to relate to. Expenditures may be made for capital projects which facilitate use by tourists and/or increase tourism to an area by improving aesthetic qualities of the municipality, enhancing the environment, on and on. So, you know, creating a trail system, that would seem to fall in here. I think my point is, may want to look at this and revise it, although I don't think you have to revise it much. It says when spending funds for capital projects, it is necessary to be sure the primary benefit is the promotion of tourist activities, conventions, trade shows, and on and on. So if you were to adhere to that, maybe you'd have maybe a little better control over it, as someone else said.
I
you
think
know.
those two that we mentioned definitely fall in that category. Well, Mike?
Dennis, thank you. Just a suggestion, as you go forward thinking about restructuring this, try to find some metrics to measure. Is head and beds the measure that you want to use to say whether you're successful or not? Or is there some other metric that's important to the tourism economy that can go along with heads and beds? And if you have something, goals that you can measure against, then it becomes a little bit easier to make some trade-offs.
Well, we do that to a certain amount, Mike. The biggest OCC tax receiver is Civic Center. That's not heads and beds. They hardly put any heads in beds, but it's feet in the street, and that's as important. I mean, you go down to Glens Falls on any game night, place is packed. So yeah.
Measure that?
That's easy enough to do. Call a few of the restaurant and bar owners and ask them. I hesitate to call on you, Brad.
I'm gonna be nice, no. Since we're in the restructuring mode, and I've brought this up in the past, and in doing this, you know, I thought as the event got more established and became more self-sufficient, the less OCTAX, you know, and the bigger, and I see the bigger the event, the more people that come in, the more money they get. But that leaves the other events that could come in and bring in more people, you know, and it's a catch-22, and like I said, we've talked about this, but I want to make sure we look at that, because I believe that was the original structure when this all started, was as the events became more established, that less and less money would be going in there, and it's just been the opposite. More and more money has gone in there, and it's left less and less money for the other events that might want to come in afterwards, which you think are great events, and move. I think that's really something where we should look at too.
Definitely. John?
John? If you look at the County of Warren Local Law Number 4 of 2003, amended by Local Law Number 10 of 2006, it has in Section 1, Title and Statement of Intent. Basically, it says the revenues derived from said tax after deducting the amount provided for administering the tax shall be allocated for tourism promotion and convention development by using the revenues to enhance the general economy of the County of Warren and its city, towns, and villages through the promotion of tourist activities, conventions, trade shows, special events, and other directly related and supporting activities. That is the title and statement of intent. And the other part that you were just referring to, Schedule A, was built upon that mission statement. So we're in line with everything that we originally proposed to do. Okay.
Thank you, John. Kevin?
Well, I asked, I think in your packet, we looked at some of the bigger events where we're giving bigger money. The other caveat I would put to that is a lot of the events we give money to are run by not-for-profits. So nobody's taking salaries out of some of the events. But the biggest event clearly is Americaid. You know, it's still number one. Hot Air Balloon Festival is number two. believe it or not, the garage sale is number 3, and then it goes to the car show, and then the wine and food festival. And those are still the biggest events, but some of those people are making profits off those events, and some people aren't. They're putting it towards, you know, if it's a chamber, they're putting it in their chamber, or if it's Balloon Fest, the Balloon Fest is run by, I think that's a 501c3, I don't think that anybody's taking it. So you need to look at that too, and we keep the money the same. You know, like I said, it's Head and Shoulders is Americaid, and you know the amount of sales tax they generate does correspond with the amount of that we give them. So I just think we should consider that. You know, and the only reason why I suggested my thing, Dennis, is to try to find the $60,750 and keep it going without tapping into the reserve fund. That was the only reason why I said that.
I understand what you said. I'd rather take it back from the investment.
$60,750, and we all would give up $2,500.
Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I agree with you on the last meeting. I came in sitting for this meeting and reviewed all the information, thinking of keeping it within the tax cap, so to speak, there. So I went through and did due diligence and recommended pricing to stay in. I was a little dismayed that we came out $60,000 over on that. We're looking at putting that into the 2020 occupancy tax spending plan, and as you just laid out, I come to a total sum of $1,730,000. I don't know if anybody else has added up what we're looking at to for that, but that's what we're, and that does not include some of these other things above and beyond that are that come up. I'd also appreciate all the work that Lisa did in sending out all the background material. That was quite a lot of material there, and also the recent spreadsheets. And out of 139 events that are listed on the spreadsheets here, that's from 2005 to 2019, we've allocated $4,421,000. 9 events out of those, 9 events received over 58% of that money, over $2,500,000. Out of those 9 events, the largest was Americaid, getting $745,000. The next 2 events together were in the $300,000 category. 4 events were in the $200,000 category, and 2 events were in the $100,000 to $200,000 category. So just looking at the structure of how we distribute things, there's some big winners on that. So that's just a rundown on some fun facts and figures. So this $1,730,000 that we're looking to commit with a vote, I think there's a resolution on the table, or are we just discussing? Okay.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, trying to get the resolution on the table. Is that an acceptable amount in light of our whole revenue, projected revenues and projected or targeted fund balance? How does this fit in?
Well, it's doable. We have the additional monies that we discussed before. They're coming in. Depends on the pleasure of the board. Go ahead.
If you're going to appropriate it out of the OCTAX reserve, you need Finance Committee's approval to do that. Finance tabled it. If that's how we're going to take care of this $60,750, we need to advance that again to Finance so that Finance can advance a resolution to the board. Otherwise, you need to come up with that $60,750 from the existing budget. And I think I've heard 3 different ideas on how to do that. One is to give all the events a haircut and find $60,750. Another is to completely eliminate the disbursements to all the towns and the other is somewhere in the middle, is to, as Supervisor Garrity suggested, take a little bit off of every town and take a little bit out of the tourism 481 budget to get to the $60,750.
Rachel?
Thank you. Just to clarify, my proposal was to eliminate the third additional expenditure to the towns, or allocation to the towns, which, as our chairman pointed out, was in fact done in part to reduce the reserve, to spend that reserve, and as he so correctly stated, that mission has been accomplished when we look out moving forward over the next few years. But, so that, not all of the allocation to the towns, but that more specific one that took place in 2015.
The extra money.
Correct. But that being said, my other 2 points were just that the matrix that Supervisor Wiles mentioned, I see that, thank you, Lisa, in 8 or 6 of our, we awarded 18 events. 6 events now have this great overview about, what is the actual impact to our community in lodging, transportation, food, beverage, retail, et cetera, but only 6. 18 we gave money to. And I think that matrix that CVB has available to them to run these numbers is incredibly important. But lastly, your Schedule A, we keep referring to it, and there's a Schedule A scoring system guideline which hasn't been updated. There's a Schedule A spending guideline. I can't figure out what resolution that was attached to. Perhaps it was attached to the resolution that Supervisor Stroud mentioned previously, the local law number 6 of 2015. But was this approved by the board, the Schedule A spending guidelines recently? Like, when you add information to this, and as Mr. Bruno, or Supervisor Bruno pointed out, it does talk about capital projects. This document isn't dated, so I'm just trying to figure out what this goes with. I've seen the spending guidelines, but...
Cool.
Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, because I asked the same question. I don't think it goes with any resolution. That's guidance that was put together by my predecessor.
So this has never been approved by our board?
Is that right?
Correct, right. So I have a major issue then with this, if the board has never approved this guidance. I think that's a big area of concern.
We're not able to find the resolution where...
That supports this.
That would...
Okay. So we can refer to this all day long, but it hasn't been approved by the board, and maybe that's really something moving forward, Dennis, as you start to look at changing this, we take a hard look at what is approved by resolution. Because I keep going back to this Schedule A, which is also the title of this, to the scoring system.
That Schedule A spending guidelines are attached to all town contracts.
Right.
And a similar one is also attached to the occupancy special events contract.
Correct. And I've seen those, I'm referring though to the one approved by the board, and that's the scoring sheet.
Correct.
Okay.
Ryan?
Yeah, the constraints that the Board of Supervisors has imposed on this funding, it's the language that Supervisor Stroud read earlier.
Okay.
That's the language from the local law, which actually mirrors the language in the state law and the state enabling law, and that's in state tax law. It's like section whatever. I think, without knowing firsthand, because I didn't do it, I think the reason why Paul did that was it's a very wide law, the way the law is currently written, was to provide some details to give people guidance as to how to interpret that widely written law.
And with all due respect, while that's helpful, it's not approved by any governing body. It is purely just guidance from a prior county administrator.
That's right.
Which conflicts some of it with the intent of the state law and the local law, in my opinion, and that's just my opinion.
If I wanted to issue different guidance, I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. I'd rather have the board do it.
All right, we've discussed a lot of things. We need to address this spending plan, get it behind us. Then I will try to set up a committee to start going over the OCTACs and deciding what we need to do and where we should go. So if somebody wants to make a proposal for the spending plan?
I'll make a motion, we go with my spending plan. It was the reduction of $2,500 from each of the communities. They got $15,000 more, and $5,000 from the 2 communities that got $60,000 more, and $5,000 from the communities that got $150,000 more.
With the remainder from 481.
And then take 20-some thousand from the 481 code, in tourism promotions. And that would reduce it by 60,750, and that would keep the events where they are now, wouldn't add on any events to get us through this year.
Are you talking about taking that off the occupancy spending plan that's in front of you, though?
Yeah, that's what we're talking
Yes.
about. Yeah.
So the 144,334 is gonna be 130?
Taking it off the 150, correct?
Hmm?
You're taking the 5,000 off the 150 for the...
Right, just
the joint
Oh, okay.
fund and
joint,
office.
yeah, 5,000 off the Lake
the
George
Queensbury
amount,
Okay.
5,000 off the Queensbury account, and 5,000 off the Bolton account, and then 2,500 from each of the towns.
Okay.
And then 20-some thousand from the tourism promotion 481 code, just for this year, and then really seriously get to work on the plans, and because, and in all due respect, taking 390 away from us this year would, and our budgets being done, would really put a strain on the towns. I believe it would. I mean,
Well, yeah, 'cause it's already in our budget.
yeah, it's in our budgets, and...
We have a second?
I'll second that.
Edna? Any further discussion, comments? Rachel?
So is this proposal, it's just
Just
for
for this year, just
this
to
year.
get us through the end of
as
the
a
year.
compromise? I think your other option is also looking at the fund balances and maybe trying to figure out, if you don't use the money every year that you're given, why can't it come back to the county?
Right.
I mean, and then if you're not using it for events, I understand the rollover, and I'm not talking about specific rollover. I understand the forms are asking about what you have going on moving forward, where those requests might come in. But there are balances there that would more than cover the 60,000, and if you looked at every town and those balances and combined them all together. But I recognize that is not what you're suggesting.
Well, as me discussing this with the chairman on numerous occasions, you know, we gotta be careful how we tell towns how to spend their oxy tax money other than some other thing. But I think we could, in our guidelines, set that no town should carry any more than, say, $10,000 as a carryover from year to year, unless they can explain it that they're holding it back for a different reason. Yeah, I agree with that, but
Okay.
you know.
Well, Mike,
Mr. Chairman, just a suggestion to Kevin's proposal, how much is the straight percentage? Each town is giving the same percentage back. Kevin, I don't know about your math, but...
Well, I didn't do it, but
yeah, no,
we
just
just looked at
just
it.
winged it.
We just tried to
Just think about just the straight percentage.
Yeah.
take 5,000 from 60.
I like what you propose.
Everybody gets 60? Not every town gets 60.
No.
Just do a percentage,
Oh.
same percentage for each town.
All right, hold on. Oh, same
Everybody
percentage?
shares.
I don't know.
No, it's not 10%.
The way
You got a calculator up there? Or-
Yeah, I got a calculator. So, if you're taking 60,750, the full amount of the appropriation for these spending plans is 405, correct? 405,000. So you need to take 50, if you're gonna do it that way, you take 15% off of what everybody gets. So, that's gonna be 15% of Lake George's 150. You're taking $22,500 away from Lake
Better
George.
keep it the other way.
That ain't happening.
I was gonna
I
say.
wouldn't do that. I would do it the way, just this year, just get us through and get...
Okay, so we have a proposal on the floor.
We have a vote, yes.
W and second,
In a second.
right.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Entertain a motion, we go to lunch.
Yeah, they used to give us lunch
That's it.
then.
Anybody got anything? Got a hand up in the back. Doug?
I was going to speak at last week's meeting, but that got so long that I didn't want to belabor it anymore. But I'd just like to take a few minutes just to share our experience. Comment probably is most directly to Mr. McGowan's comment, and I understand this supposed sunset component,
And I would agree with that, but because we have been doing this for 10 years, over that 10-year period, we have received a total of $262,000 in 10 years in occupancy awards. And using the county's numbers, and the most recent numbers I have are 2012 numbers for economic impact that I've gotten from Lisa. I'm using those numbers. That's what we're driving our economic impact numbers from, and it's $20,221,000 that we have generated in economic impact against the $262,000 we received. So we have received 1.3% of what we have produced in terms of economic impact. And it's interesting, I went through this morning and I actually broke it down in a per team average. We received, on average, of all of our tournaments, $725 registration fee per team. $725 for the team coming in. Right off top of that, immediately I give $224 to umpire fees. It's just immediately goes right back out the door. For hotels, each team coming in is paying hotels between $2,400 and $3,000, average numbers. Restaurants, $2,100. Shopping, entertainment, and all the other things, $1,500 to $2,000 per team. So each team coming in is paying me $725. The other economic impacts, hotels, restaurants, shopping, totals $7,000 per team. And that breaks down to about $137 per person with the team when you take their hotel rooms, their food, and everything over the weekend. So we're then generating with 16 teams on a weekend tournament. I'd love to have 2 facilities on a weekend, but I can't afford the debt load to build another facility. I've got, on average, every weekend, 8 to 12 teams on the waiting lists, and we can't accommodate them. So I am generating 157 times more revenue in terms of economic impact than we're receiving. And we've had to work with our lenders to restructure our debt load. Part of what we lose, where we have lost revenue over the last, well, basically since we were talking before about the economy going to hell in 2008, 2009. We went through those 2 years, and I said, knock on wood, we don't feel it yet. We felt it in 2010 and 11, and we have never picked back up from that. Part of it is this stuff. You talk to any athletic director in any school locally or in the state, and fewer kids as a percentage are participating in athletics, and that's impacting our business. You now have, we see e-events going on, and we're looking, can we get into that market in some capacity? I don't know if we can or not. We generate 83% of our annual revenue in the months November through March, and the vast majority of it, over 50% of our annual revenue now, is our tournaments. But we're barely scraping by. So because we've been doing this 10 years, doesn't mean we're profitable or very profitable. I don't take a salary, neither does my wife. We take a check when there's something there. I then took all these teams that are coming in, and I backed all of that out just on a per team basis, and looked at the occupancy tax that we received, $40,000. We had 347 teams last year, 347 teams. And it would be a huge impact if we did it over one weekend. The lacrosse event at Golden Goal this summer is talking like, I think, 40 to 60 teams. Maybe somebody knows that number better than I do. I think it's 60 they're up to now. That's a one weekend event. Most of the other events are one-shot events. We go 23 different weekends throughout the year. So we are bringing in economic impact, economic revenue to the community on a continual basis. I don't think there's a hotel in town that could survive off just one weekend of events from us. They need it all. But when we take all that down, that $40,000 divided by the 347 teams, that's $115 per team. Typical team is between 26 and 30 people coming with that team. So that works out to $3.83 of that $40,000 is subsidizing each person coming in. And that believe it or not, backed right out to 1.3% of our total revenue that we receive from the OCTAX dollars. So we appreciate that. One of the struggles we're running into this year for the first time ever, Connecticut, there's a facility in Connecticut, Dave Rocha's facility. Connecticut has a convention and sports bureau, not convention and visitors, they call it convention and sports bureau. They and the state gave him some grant dollars. He won't tell me how much money. I've been able to find out how much, but he said, yeah, we did get grant money from the state and from the Convention and Sports Bureau to build 6 brand new fields last year. So he has become a major competitor of ours during the summer. I've had something happen this year that I've never had happen. I've got 4 teams that have pulled out of 3 of our summer tournaments. And the reason being, when I asked, I said, well, why? He said, we can't get a hotel room for less than $200. I said, you don't have to use our partner hotels in the summer. You do during the winter tournaments, but not during the summer tournaments. And still can't find one under 200 that's a hotel that I'm comfortable with. I then went and looked at the Convention and Visitor Bureau website, or actually the Fast Pitch Nation is the facility I'm talking about. It's over near Hartford, Connecticut. The CVB, Convention and Sports Bureau, has actually done all of this for him. All of these hotels, every single one of these blocks is a hotel, and they're all flagship hotels. He even says that in his promotional stuff. Marriott, Windsor, Comfort Inn, Hartford, Courtyard Marriott, Windsor, Fairfield, Hartford, Hampton Inn, Hilton Gardens, Home to Suites, Hyatt, Marriott, Framingham, Residence Inn, Marriott, and it goes on. They go from $97 to $157. I got a coach says, Doug, I just got a room at Hampton for $97 in Connecticut. My parents aren't going to spend another $100 per room to come to your tournament, and that's per night. So it's two nights in a row. 3 of the teams that we just lost are 12 and under teams. So if I've lost them this year, I don't know if I'll get them back at 14 and under, 16 under, 18 under over the next 6-8 years. And the other team was a 14 under team. It's a challenge that we're going to be facing, and we're going to have to be working a lot harder to try and promote the amenities. Those teams that have come to Lake George in the past, come to our tournaments in the past, particularly in the summer, understand the tourist component, and they can do more things. I get coaches all the time. Can we get our games in the morning so we can go do tourist things in the afternoon? We really want to do that. We want to do team building stuff. And obviously I can't schedule everybody in the morning, so we try to spread that around for teams that are here for multiple tournaments, so they're playing in the morning, sometimes they're playing in the afternoon or evening. But it's just something I wanted to share, because I know that there's lots of discussion, and the scoring system that you've got, if you'd use that, you would have been paying everybody more than a lot more money, you know. So there has to be some work done to obviously retool that scoring system, and I think that scoring system needs to be put in place more. I have no problem sharing my financials, but I don't get into the details and the nitty-gritty of my financials. But I will say that we are not making any real profits as an operator, and this, our total annual revenue is around $600,000 to $680,000. $40,000 is a huge amount for us, and it's important. And I'm basically saying it's just so we can keep it. Here's another thing that happened. I had a note here, and I missed this one. We set all our fees in August, September, because that's when our registrations start. Our insurance renewal comes November 25th. Our insurance went up $38,000 this year, 32% increase. Our broker shopped it to 36 different markets. It's an industry trend that just happened to hit severely this year. And basically, obviously the $40,000 I got is not going to pay my insurance, but I've just eaten up $40,000 in increased insurance premiums this year. That was completely unexpected. So just some things I wanted to share, just food for thought. Keep it in the back of your mind as you go through your discussions and reworking all of this. And I thank you for your support and hope to continue to get it in the future.
Yep.
But isn't some of yours, Mr. Miller, isn't some of yours economic development, what you're talking about, Mike, where these hoteliers who plead a lot of times about not having revenue either, but then, are they may get the revenue, but they're shooting a avenue like his in the foot by raising their prices, room prices?
I talked to the folks at the Queensbury this last week, and our teams, we don't require them to stay at our partner hotels in the summer because the majority of our partner hotels are the Marriott and the Lake George hotels. And I understand completely their rates are going up in the summer. Saratoga is up, that's higher rate. We always had that corridor at Exit 18, the Home to Suites, Exit 18, Exit 19, the Home to Suites, the Holiday Inn Express, and now the Fairfield and the Queensbury that were in that 160, 170, 180 range in the summer. And Eric at the folks at the Queensbury and the Fairfield says, yeah, that was the low spot and that helped you, but we just need to raise our rates. And so they've raised their rates, so it's across the board. They're all over $198 is the Holiday Inn Express. That's what they're charging the teams. And Amanda said, well, maybe we can go down to 188, but we're losing the teams because of it. So, and when we compete against the Connecticut market, that's really tough now, and it's going to get a lot tougher for us. And we're going to have to work harder because some teams are going to go over there because there's new fields, new facilities, and they're going to try it. One went over last year, and he says, yeah, we're coming back to yours this summer. So, because there's more to do after the tournament. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, but that's a trend a lot of places. I mean, you saw that with NASCAR. We talked to Mayor Kay about that. You price yourself out where people can't afford to go for the 2-day event or that 1-day event. They price themselves out. It seems to me like our hoteliers,
and
for whatever reason, are raising the rates, but that has a negative impact on what you're trying to do by bringing them here.
Yeah.
Joe, if you suggested that we should go after the hoteliers to lower their rates, I don't think we're going to get too far with that.
Yeah.
Get as you can.
You can do that.
Most of it.
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
try.
And I'm going to be sharing that stuff I just had there with them.
But there is one thing I wanted to share. One of the things I've learned recently is there's competition for this market. It's not just Connecticut. Saratoga has a strategic plan for their economic development, and it includes the sports market. So even just down the street, we've got to think about competition for those dollars. And that's what the private sector really has to kind of help us figure out. But we can only go so far. We can only go so far.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Doug, really appreciate your waiting and patience, and you always do a great job, and we appreciate the input we get from you. It's,
In everybody's packet, because Doug does this all throughout the whole year, it doesn't fit easily in the event calculator. So
Right.
I have attached his last year's report, and as soon as he makes his report for 2019, well, this was for 2018, when
We just finished our last tournament for 2019, the
Right.
last weekend in December, and so I
As soon as we
pulled
get
all
that
together.
information, I'll share that with everybody as well.
great. Thank you. Anybody got anything else? Motion to adjourn? Edna? Kevin? All in favor?
Howdy.
Amen. Hey.